Good evening. My name is Ed Johnson. I'm acting or Mayor Pro Tem tonight for the meeting. I'd like to call the meeting to order. We're doing it in person at the Governor's Center and electronically. The date is March 8th, 2021. Everybody stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, first we need the approval of the agenda.
Carrie Johnson will make a motion to approve.
Noel will second.
Everybody that approves, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Next, we need the approval of the minutes. If there's any questions or anything, or corrections, I should say. Okay, I'll call for a motion.
Carrie Johnson will make a motion to approve.
Emily will second.
Everybody say aye for the motion.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, the first thing on the agenda for tonight is call a public hearing. And we'll call the public hearing in the governor's room, and virtual time is 7:03.
Mayor Pro Tem and members, this public hearing is about North 3rd Street from Center and McLeod Streets from West St. Julian to 1,000 feet north. And this relates to water sewer roadway and other improvements in that area. Notice has been provided under state statute, both published and mailed notice, Mr. Mayor. So generally what we do is have a very short staff report related to this effort. And then there's an opportunity for public input. And generally that public input is limited to 5 minutes per person. So Mayor Pro Tem, if you don't mind, I'll turn it over to Pete and Jeffrey, and they'll give a brief overview of the project.
Okay, Pete, you're on.
Mayor Pro Tem and City Council, tonight we're going to have a presentation by our city engineer who has completed the design work on the project and completed the assessment role. And Jeff will take it over from here.
Great, thank you, Pete. Mayor Pro Tem and City Council members, Todd did explain quite a bit of the project or of the hearing tonight. This is the assessment hearing for the North 3rd Improvement Street project. Todd provided a brief description of the improvements that are proposed. This is for North 3rd Street, north of St. Julian, about 1,000 feet. Also includes McLeod Street, some storm sewer, some curb and gutter, some street improvements, and also sanitary sewer and water main improvements north of McLeod on North 3rd. This assessment hearing is is required by law to be held for assessing improvement cost of benefiting property owners. So we're here to allow those property owners an opportunity to speak to the City Council regarding the proposed assessments. Bids for the improvements were received. This is something we talked about on the council level, a couple weeks ago. Based on those bids, assessments were updated, and then property owners were individually notified, both by mail and then also in the newspaper. There was an ad posted. The individual notifications sent to each property owner included their amount to be assessed, their payment terms, instructions for landowners to defer an assessment, and also instructions for objecting or appealing ultimately an assessment too if they choose to do that. One thing I wanted to note, it's important for property owners to understand that they need to provide a written notice here to the City Council prior to the assessment hearing or during this hearing. I know we did have one, I think there's one in the packet here, of a notice that was, or objection that was obtained prior to the hearing. So if you That's required as part of appealing later on to a district court. If you do not provide that notice here at the hearing or prior to the hearing, essentially you waive your right to that appeal. I think, let's see, tonight's assessment hearing allows property owners, as Todd mentioned, to discuss the proposed assessment and file an objection if they choose. I guess assessment requests for deferrals are also possible tonight too if the property owner chooses to do that. I believe they have up to 30 days even after the adoption of the assessment to make that request. City Council will consider adoption of the assessment here later tonight as another action. So with that, that's all I have, unless there's any questions, but we can open up the hearing otherwise.
Pete, do you have anything else?
I do not.
Thanks, Jeff. Mayor Pro Tem and members, this would be the appropriate time for there to be public input, if there's a want for public input. And so again, we recognize folks as they come forward. Certainly, I think tonight, I don't see anybody online, but we do have a few people that are here tonight. And so maybe the best way to do that is that they can raise their hand and then come forward. We'll have a microphone for them. And then they would state their name and address and provide their input at the hearing. And then we'll thank them and move on to the next person. Does that sound okay, Ed?
Sounds fine.
All right, so if anyone's interested, but before we go to that, I do, as Jeff mentioned, and within your packet, Mayor Pro Tem and members on page 34, you did receive one written objection before the meeting. And so this is from Carrie Leonard at 1420 North 3rd Street. And she says, to whom it may concern, this is my written objection to the proposed assessment of $44,729.66 for the improvements to North 3rd, Center, and McLeod Streets. Thank you, and it's signed by Carrie Leonard. Carrie's a property owner in that area. So any that we receive in advance, we read into the record. That is reading it into the record. Certainly, she's here tonight. If she wants to talk more, she certainly can do that as well. And so, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, if you don't mind, we'll let her go first. Okay.
Hi, I'm Carrie Leonard, and I am the property owner at 1420 North 3rd Street. I am opposed to this project. The special assessment is of no special value to my property. I already have water and sewer. I'm still paying on that, in fact, and I don't need the gravel road to be replaced with pavement. Also doesn't bring any value to my property. I have a few concerns. During the construction time, there will be a negative impact to the business that I run and that my husband run out of our home. And I don't think the city assessment on the back page, their policy states that they would take a look at the equity and make sure it's distributed, the cost. So I'm not sure that that has been looked at to make sure that it's fair among the property owners, since I already have water and sewer and I'm one of the only ones being assessed for that again. So I guess everything I just said would be on the record that I oppose this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie.
Thank you, Carrie. Is anybody else wish to speak? And remember to state your name and address.
Chip Gay. I own 1331 North 3rd Street and 1321 North 3rd Street. This property, unfortunately, is way overdue. The road has been horrible since I purchased the property several years ago. It was a blacktop, and the city would never fill the holes. And then we didn't want them to make it a gravel road, and now it's a gravel road, and it's a mess. My son lives at the property. He's constantly got to wash his car and stuff, so it's, unfortunately, I mean, this is going to cost me almost $20,000. I work full-time at Mayo Clinic Health System, and this and my city taxes are going to cost me about 3/4 of my yearly Mayo salary. So it's a huge financial impact. Unfortunately, it's something that needs to be done. And, it'd be nice if they could lower the interest rate on some of that or whatever, but that's a minor point. I do have a request for the project. I've been meeting with Jeff Knutson, and I have the drawing that Jeff gave me. And I don't know if you want to look at this or if we can show it up on the screen, but the right-of-way the fourplex at 1331 North 3rd, the way that Jeff has this drawn out, they're going to tear up a lot of the parking area that I have. And it's not so much the cars don't park there, but they back up where they back up. So they're going to tear out all this gravel or all my pavement to put in this right-of-way and put grass in there that I've also been told the city's not going to take care of. So I'm paying for this. The city is going to make me take care of it and mow the lawn, and I'm going to lose a huge chunk of the parking area. So my request to the city would be if we could make that actually on both properties, but especially on 1331, that if we could reduce that right-of-way and put just a small little strip in there so my tenants would have room to back up. And I can show you the picture if anybody's interested.
Mr. Gave, for tonight, we're really talking about the assessment process, but I'm sure Pete or Jeff will be happy to visit with you. Pete's on the line here, so they'll give you a ring.
I've already talked with them about this.
Yep.
And Jeff told me that I needed to come to the city council meeting and make this request.
And that's cool. We just aren't going to be in the mode to change a plan tonight. It
Okay.
would probably take a little bit more research, and there's some engineering that would be done relative to that.
Okay.
And so the council typically gives us latitude to make modifications if from an engineering perspective, it's reasonable as a part of the project.
Okay.
And so we'll visit about that and
Okay,
talk
and
to
I've
you.
already talked with them, and Jeff was really friendly at the beginning, and the more I've worked with him, he came to me and said, hey, let's meet. And so I told him, I said, yeah, can we do this and can we do that? He's like, well, and then, so I just need to make the process clear. If the city can do that, great. If we need to bring it to a city council vote, which kind of Jeff made me, I was under the impression that that's what it was gonna have to be. So I just would like a little bit more space, tear out good blacktop. It's a good surface area. If we could tear out less of that, that'd be awesome.
Sure.
That's
So let's make this our plan for you. Tomorrow, in the afternoon, the team meets with the city engineer. I'll make sure that issue gets covered.
Okay.
And we'll communicate back with you. I'm not fully understanding some of what you said, but by tomorrow or the next day, I'll certainly be more educated and have a better understanding of
Okay.
what you're talking about.
I've got
And
a
there are
sen-
some things that you mentioned just briefly that relate to where the right-of-way is. That's probably not changeable. But let's do some research and find out, and then we can talk about it some more.
Yeah, I was told that the city council can change that and that it has been done, but not very often. The city is not taking care of that area, and then to have all these super strict codes and rules now, it just seems a little, I feel like the poor stepchild, and now they're gonna do something, and now they're holding me to these super high standards, and, just,
Well, we'd hope that all stepchildren were treated the same, whether they were poor or not, so that's one
Yes.
point. The second point that I would make is, I think we'll continue to be happy to visit with you, but without a clear understanding, I don't want to give you a precise answer.
Okay.
And although I know Jeff indicated that tonight, if you have an objection, now is the time to talk about that objection. And again, I wasn't a part of your conversation,
Yep.
but I would suggest that this is really about objection to the project. If you want to file an objection to this project, and unless you get what you want, you don't want the project, this is your opportunity to do that tonight too.
well.
I want to give you every
Yeah.
opportunity.
The road's gotta be done, I just don't wanna
For
lose all
sure.
my parking area, or as little of it as possible, so.
Well, and the space that you own is your space. The space that you do not own is owned by the community.
But I've also maintained that property for as long as I've owned it. The city has not maintained that. They have not done anything. And the city did not pave that. The previous owner, I think, paved that. So
So he paved on property that wasn't his, is what you're telling me, and then you bought it that way. Is that accurate?
I would assume so, yeah, because,
Well, let's take a look at the map. We'll be smarter and be able to communicate more.
Yeah.
Sound reasonable?
yeah.
All right. Excellent. Thank you, sir.
Yep, thank you. Is there anybody else that wishes to speak at the hearing?
I do not see anyone on, oh,
Yep.
thank you.
Hi, Tom.
Hello, how are you tonight?
Good.
Good. Please, your name and address.
Donna Hinden, 1401 North Third. I just want a clarification. So, on the unpaid balance, we pay interest.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So, we're both retired, well over 65. One of us is disabled. So, if we would choose to defer it, do we pay the interest all the way through until we settle it up?
So right now, as the resolution is constructed and the council can change it, it does not require you to pay interest during the deferral, but it limits the deferral in two specific circumstances. One of which is, forgive me, if the property would change hands,
Right.
the assessment must be paid. I got to get to the resolution because my memory is fading.
So if
Pete,
we
my-
sell it or,
Right, there are two specific
Lose it.
provisions. Right, transfer property, sell it, deed it to someone, give it to someone, anytime the deed would change.
Okay.
And then the second is that we have a time limit that's stipulated in the resolution. And my recollection is that it is 10 years.
I think that's what it said.
Yeah, I believe it's 10 years.
Yeah.
So if you're still there in 10 years and haven't sold it, that's when the assessment would start.
Okay,
And then interest is zero until that 10-year point.
until that 10 years.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, okay.
So just to be clear, though, if you are looking for a deferral, there are 5 different ways that someone can defer. And so you didn't say this, but I think you maybe mentioned it to Pete or to Newt at some point. But I believe that you are eligible for a deferral. You just have to send us a note. We have to have something in writing that says you
Right.
would like the deferral, and then we help you out and make it work out.
I just wanted a clarification on the interest part and,
Yep,
okay,
that's how it works. Thank you, ma'am.
thank you.
Okay, so we'll do last call for any other objections to the North Third Street work. Seeing none, I will close the hearing at 7:18. Is that good for that then, Ted?
That's just fine, sir. Yep, you're set to go. So the next item would be, any other visitors on any other items?
Any other visitors have anything, comments on the agenda items? Seeing none. General visitor comments? Seeing none. Approval of the consent agenda. The resolution is on page 31. Does anybody have any questions on the consent agenda? Seeing none, I will need a motion.
Noel will make a motion to approve.
This is Steve Grabs, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, second.
Barbara, you can call the roll.
Councilmember Ruflat,
Aye.
Councilmember Grams,
Aye.
Councilmember Carrie Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Noel,
Aye.
Councilmember Ed Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos.
Aye.
Motion's approved. And I see we have no unfinished business. That brings us back to new business. And the first one is the North Third Street and Center Street and McLeod Street project.
Mayor Pro Tem and members, you have information included in your packet. As you know, notice has been published and sent in accordance with the state statute you provided for a hearing tonight. Again, the resolution, the information starts in your packet on page 32 with the resolution starting on page 35.
Thanks, Todd. I know we've had several discussions about this, but does anybody have any questions? Brad?
Well, asking about Carrie Leonard's property. As far as there's currently, she paid to have city sewer and water run to it previously. Are you replacing all of the lines straight to her, from the road to her house, or just the line at the roadway? Would be my first question.
So to answer that, Councilmember DeVos, our situation with the Leonard property is she's adjacent to another property that's undeveloped. And so we'll need to extend water main and sewer main to the end of the cul-de-sac. It is partially past her property or into her property right now. And so what you're seeing for a water main and sewer main assessment is to get the water and sewer to the end of her property is what she would be paying for. She is correct in that she does have a water line. When she installed the water line a few years back, we allowed her to go to the main and connect at the point of termination just on the south end of her property. We did not force her at that time to put the water main in. So she did make in lieu of assessment, which we're willing to give them credit for on their our charges. So we've tried to work with the Leonards and get things organized there, and we'll probably have further discussions related to this with them.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Steve?
Pete and Todd, we've had several, in fact, very many discussions relative to this project. After our vote tonight on the assessment that's been levied against the property owners, does that mean, and for clarity, does that mean that we are moving forward, or are we going to have further discussions as a council our next step in terms of after this evening, that we'll review the project again and then vote for its starting? Again, I'm confused because we've had a lot of discussions about this project.
You've gone through quite a few of the technical situations related to Minnesota Statute 429. With this assessment hearing tonight, what the council's actually doing is letting each property owner know what their assessment's going to be. The final point where we would have authorization would come on April 12th, if that's where we end up, where you would authorize the project to proceed.
So as a point of clarification, the action for that is approval of the bids. That's the action that would be brought to you.
Okay. All right. Thanks for that clarity. That makes helps me out and understand it more.
Carrie?
Okay, so Pete, Todd, or Jeff, I'm wondering what, I guess, the city response is to some of the concerns that were raised. So the ones that I wrote down were equity concerns in the way that the policy is managed for distributing assessments, the impact on the businesses at the end of the street, so the daycare and the husband's business. And I might be curious about the length of time this project will entail. And then also I'm curious about how the interest rate is set as well.
So let me talk about those and then Pete can chime in.
Sure.
Let's go from the last to the first, if you don't mind. So the
Very
last
good.
question you had was about interest rates. You have a policy that determines interest rates. So this is in accordance with your policy. So there are really two primary issues that come up. If the city uses cash to pay for this, it's 1% over a T-bill at that time. In this instance, you're planning to issue debt, so it is 1% over the debt issuance cost. As you can see within the information that's included in the resolution on page 36 and 37, that interest rate is fixed at that time. And so we'll be able to, we're following the policy, I guess is what I'm saying.
Okay.
Let me
There's
go,
that
so
one.
help me, go backwards to number
Check.
3.
Okay, so I was curious about, what do we imagine for this, how long this project will entail and, you know, how we minimize the impact on the businesses that are run off of that street?
Yeah, that's a Pete or Jeff question, gentlemen.
Right. We'll try to minimize the impact for the Leonards and their business. We're aware of what they have going there, so we haven't set up how access will be completed. But one of the things we'll do is work with the contractor so that that road is passable at night, or we can schedule activities for deliveries for the Leonards down there. And I think the other question was as far as Chip Gay's questions on the parking.
No, but going back to the impact on the businesses. So there might be even a safety factor because there's a daycare that's run at the end of the street. How do we make sure that it's a safe, I guess, construction project for knowing that there is that type of business at the end of that street?
Right. Yeah, we're well aware that Carrie runs a daycare there. So that'll be something we discuss with the contractor if the project is awarded. So we'll take that into consideration.
And how long will this be under construction? Do we anticipate?
Well, it'll be done in phases. I'm guessing it's probably going to be 6 to 8 weeks.
Okay.
I can answer that, Pete.
Okay.
We've got let's see, it's September 24th, 2021, so that'll be, you know, if the council does go ahead with the project here next month, all construction would have to be complete by September 24th. We also provided a window in there of about, I think it was 70 working days. So the contractor, you know, if we get an early spring here, the contractor can start right away. The idea is that once he starts, or he or she starts, they've got 70 days to complete the project. They can't move in, tear things up, and then come back a month later and you can get everything else done and take all, you know, the whole year to complete the work. So September 24th would be the absolute completion, final completion date with 70 working days as a window in there to allow the contractor some flexibility.
And there'll always be a way to drive to the end of the street?
The goal, that's a good question because the contractor is required to provide traffic control during construction. So as Pete mentioned at the pre-construction meeting, we will talk with the contractor and make sure they understand that. And that's something they understand. This is kind of a unique situation where we've got a long roadway and it's a dead end. I mean, there's not public access on the very north end there. So they understand that there's going to be some traffic control, some temporary means necessary in order to make access to homes available. And I know I did speak with Ms. Leonard a few days ago, and kind of went through with the project with her a little bit on the telephone and reassured her that we would do everything we can to minimize disruption to her and her business, along with everybody else's homes along there, because construction is one of those things that we wish we could snap our fingers and it would be done just like that, but it's not. Unfortunately, it takes time. So, but our goal ultimately is just to make it as least inconvenient as possible.
Thank you. And Todd, my last question just was addressing Ms. Leonard's concern about the way that our policy is applied equitably. Can you speak to that at all, that concern?
I can speak that we believe that we are following the policy, and the council and property owners are in an interesting situation in that has people developed in areas where improvements were not made, they are likely to face assessments. In my neighborhood or Ed's neighborhood or others as examples, when you purchase the lot or when the lot was originally developed, the full roadway and full water and sewer mains, et cetera, were put into play. That wasn't the case for her property. And so it's a question as to whether the council believes that the rest of the taxpayers should pay for that or whether it's appropriate that the abutting property owner pay for that. Certainly, as she's issued an objection, we can certainly have some more discussion with her. Has Pete indicated, and maybe he didn't say this at this level, but we have met with her a couple times. We were prepared to offer an opportunity to forgive the remaining assessment on the service line issue that she still has assessment on. There was disagreement on the amount of money that she had paid originally. But the records from the county are very clear from my perspective. And so I think we're happy to do that. The opportunity that anyone who objects has to go to district courts provides us an opportunity to visit some more about how to make that feel more equitable to her, and then the council can take action on that. We don't see this as necessarily being the end of this discussion, as you may have other people that defer based on the 30 days that they have, as Jeff indicated in the hearing.
Yeah, thank you. I thought it was important to not only hear the concerns, but I guess address the concerns that were raised.
For sure.
I have one final question, if that's okay.
No, that's fine.
So Pete, leading up to, I guess, today, what percentage of property owners signed the waiver?
Oh, boy.
I don't need an exact, but what's a ballpark?
Yeah, I believe 17 property owners did sign initially up front in favor of the project. We've really only heard from a couple that have been opposed to the project in the point that they'd have to pay. If they didn't have to pay anything, they're all for it, of course. But as we've talked through the project, there has been more of an understanding of what needs to happen down there to make the improvement.
Thank you.
Just to be clear, Mayor Pro Tem and Member Johnson, if the council wished tonight to modify the resolution to wipe all of the assessments away, that is within your authority. However, remember, there's a balancing act going on here, and that would then assign all of the costs for these improvements to the remainder of the taxpayers within your community. And so it's using your policy that was developed many years ago to try and find the appropriate balance.
Okay, is there any other questions? Seeing none, the resolution is on page 35 for adopting assessments for North 3rd Street, Center Street, and McLeod Streets from West St. Julian to 1,000 feet north project. I will need a motion.
This is Steve Grants, Mr. Mayor Wotam. I move the resolution.
Is there a second?
Noel will second.
Okay. Barbara, call the roll.
Councilmember Grams,
Clearly, I understand the concerns of people. If I were in their position, I would be probably concerned too. But the majority of the people want this and are willing to pay for it, so I'll have to vote for it.
Councilmember Carrie Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Noel,
Aye.
Councilmember Ed Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos,
Aye.
Councilmember Bruflat.
Aye.
Motion passed. Next thing on the agenda is the donation by the St. Peter Masons.
Mayor Pro Tem, before you, I think tonight you should have some Masons sitting in the audience there. They'd like to make a presentation.
They're here.
Before they do, I would like to mention a couple of things that have happened along the way here as we've discussed this project. City staff got together with the Masons and discussed what they would like to do to participate with Minnesota Square. Dan Honigschlager and his crew met with staff several times, talked about what the Freemasons do, how they participate in the 4th of July parade, and what Minnesota Square really means to those guys as well. We sat down and talked about a couple of different options, narrowed that project scope down after several visits, And in working with the Masons, we came up with a scope of about a $64,000 shelter that would have some amenities in it that would accommodate the Freemasons on the 4th of July and then serve the community in an outstanding manner. I guess at this time I would invite Dan to work with the Mayor Pro Tem and do a presentation.
Dan, if you want to come up and your crew, if you all want to come up and socially distance, grab a seat there as best as you can, that's wonderful.
Okay, but I'd like to thank you, Pete, for the good introduction there. I'd like to introduce the other members that I have with me. My name is Dan Hannetzlager. I am the secretary of the St. Peter Masons Group. Next to me is Stephen Haltengren. He is our current president of the group. Next to him is Chad Hannetzlager, is our vice president, senior vice president, and Cliff Isley, our junior vice president. Well, about 2 years ago, we started a process within our group to figure out a way that we can contribute back to the city. And what we talked over were a number of different projects, one of them being the park shelters. All of the parks in town have a shelter donated by the various nonprofit groups, except us. So then we started searching around, and since we do a shelter, or I'm sorry, we set up a tent at Minnesota Square during the 4th of July. We sponsor the 2 Shrine Parade units that are in the parades. We sponsor them, and then we feed them the chicken dinner at the park afterwards. So we contribute to the community the best we can. We felt that we should have a shelter in that area. After working with Pete and the Parks Board, they came up with other ideas of possibly moving the shelter down centered along 3rd Avenue, or 3rd Street there a little bit. We talked about that. That would actually benefit the 2 band festivities that we have in the group, or in the area. They could use that as a second band shell. That's the area that they set up their second band shell. So it all worked out very well for us. It met what we were proposing. We worked with the city, Pete Moulton and the Parks Board to come up with an exact location. We just had a couple of minor requests. That was that we name it the St. Peter Masonic Shelter, and that we have a perpetual 4th of July reservation so that we can have our picnic there and feed the shrine units that come through. St. Peter Mason's Shelter. Sorry. And after talking all that over, it worked out well for our group. It worked out well with the Parks Board. So on that note, we would like to present the city with a check of $50,000 to contribute toward that park shelter. Chad has that check to hand over to Pro Tem Mayor.
We'll let Ed handle the check if that's okay, gentlemen?
That's okay.
All right, fantastic. And the council needs to take action, but we probably should give you a hand. It's a wonderful gift, so thank you very much. Do you have a phone that you would like?
We would like a photo if we could.
All right, do you have one that you want me, or I can use mine? It's up to you guys, whatever you want to do. Whatever easiest.
Just forgive us for regular closer.
Yeah.
We got masks.
All right, wait that. I will.
So
So Ed, if you can sneak in there just a little bit. Okay, everybody smile. 1, 2, 3. Let's try one more with a bigger smile. 1, 2, 3. All right, it took about 4 minutes.
Thank you.
No, thank you guys very
Thanks
much.
again.
Thank you very much. Are you sure they aren't both cashable?
We can try. We'll take this one.
Try.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So Pete, why don't you go on with how the rest of the shelter gets put together and the action that's on the agenda starting on page 43 and resolution on page 42.
Sure. What we're asking tonight is to approve the resolution on page 42. The overall plan would be is that we've identified about a $64,000 project That includes purchasing of the shelter. We would accept the donation from the Masons. Staff would work to construct that in conjunction with other work that we're planning down there with the plaza, including electricity and some water. And then we would do quite a bit of in-kind work ourselves. And we anticipate about $5,000 in additional cash funds would be needed from the parks budget, where we'd make some adjustments to make this happen.
Mayor, members, the resolution, or Mayor Pro Tem and members, the resolution's on page 42, and as you'll see on the bottom half of the page, it really does 4 things. It provides acceptance of donation under your policy, which is a requirement of your rules. It authorizes city staff to move forward with the construction as been articulated. It provides for the name of the shelter and authorizes that exclusive reservation for the 4th of July for their utilization.
Anybody got any questions? Carrie?
Yeah, I just have a comment. I just wanted to say thank you. And even though you don't have a park shelter right now, I know that there's evidence of the work that you do in the community. I was a part of an organization that accepted a donation as well. So just wanted to say thank you. And the park shelter plans look really great. It's going to be a great addition to the park. And it really aligns with, I think, the look of the park really well. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Todd?
Mayor, members, since the mayor, Steve Grams is on there, I can wait until Steve.
Steve?
Pete, could you explain what kind of construction the shelter will be made out of with this generous donation? The legs on it, the posts, how durable it would be to the elements, to people using it, that type of thing.
Right. It would be, if you look on page, let's see here, we've kind of got a rough drawing or an estimate here. On page 40, you can kind of see it would be a tube metal, 4 or 5 inch. We're still looking at different options there as far as the standing legs are concerned. It would be roughly a 9-foot ceiling in there to the first tier level. The pitch of the roof, we're trying to get to match the pavilion at Minnesota Square. We would be building it to a building code specification that would meet Minnesota requirements. And so we're working with the building official to make that happen here. I would have a concrete floor and concrete footings in order to meet those requirements for wind.
So then it would be very durable, then.
Absolutely.
Okay. Does that mean, from the Masons' perspective, that the city council gets to do a taste test every year during the parade before it's open to the public?
I think they'd be open to that.
I don't know, I'm watching them and many of them said no. Mayor Pro Tem, if there's no one else, I do have a note, since Mayor Zeman was unable to be here tonight, he wanted to mention his thanks and mention that, as a community, we're not only grateful for the Masons and all that you do, but there's a lot of service organizations and individuals that have contributed and their time, energy, efforts, and fundraising to help St. Peter prosper. So thanks, especially, the mayor says thanks especially to you tonight and to all of the organizations for reminding us what being part of a community really means. So, from the mayor, thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, if there's no further questions, the resolution is on page 42, accepting the donations from the Nicollet Lodge number 54 of the St. Peter Masons. Is anybody want to make a motion?
Emily will so move.
Was that Emily? I need a second.
Yes.
Carrie Johnson will second.
Emily 1, Carrie 2. Barbara, call the roll.
Councilmember Carrie Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember Noel.
Aye.
Councilmember Ed Johnson.
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos.
Aye.
Councilmember Bruflat.
Aye.
Councilmember Grams.
All right.
Motion's approved. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Next item on the new business is the DNR or Outdoor Recreation Program and grant submission. Pete, I take it it's you.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson and City Council, this is a repeat of what we did last year. Last year we were unsuccessful in obtaining grant funding, but we did have quite a bit of feedback from the DNR people on letting us know how we should proceed, and hopefully we have made the adequate changes in order to obtain this grant. Basically what we're requesting is that you approve us submitting a grant for roughly $22,000. This is a 50-50 matching grant, and so our goal would be to get this grant submitted by the end of March. We would hear back probably in June and then proceed to do work if so funded. The scope of the work, Todd, do you have that map on page 40, I believe it is?
Give me just a moment and I'll be able to bring it up. Thanks, Pete.
Basically what this will do would be where the community sits during rock big events. It would be for sidewalk, trail, connecting trail inside of Minnesota Square there, plus additional parking off of Elm Street. There you go. Everything in the yellow is what we were looking at as far as funding for trail improvements within the park. And so that kind of gives you a ballpark of what we've got going. As you're aware, from College Avenue coming into the park where the plaza's at, we'll be talking about that in a little bit as far as the engineering for that with Bolton and Mink, but that's already budgeted and on the schedule to be completed. So our request tonight is to ask you to allow us to submit the grant and hopefully get half of this funded.
Okay, has anybody got any questions for Pete? Seeing none, the resolution is on page 45, authorizing the submission of the application for the Department of Natural Resources Outdoor Recreational Grant Program. I will need a motion.
Noel will make a motion to approve.
And this is Steve Grams, Mr. Maker, 10 second.
Okay, Barbara, call the roll.
Councilmember Noel,
Aye.
Councilmember Ed Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos,
Aye.
Councilmember Bruflat,
Aye.
Councilmember Grams,
Aye.
Councilmember Carrie Johnson.
Aye.
Motion's approved.
Thank you.
Next on the list is Community Spirit Park, so I take it it's Pete again.
Actually, Mayor and members, that's me. Pete is the backup in case there's a technical question. But Mayor and members, this starts on page 46, and the resolution providing for approval of this gets a little bit further out on page 56, I believe. I'm sorry, 57. So as Mayor Pro Tem Johnson and council's members may recall, for a few years here, we've had an agreement related to maintenance of Community Spirit Park. The city owns essentially half of the parkland there, and the school district owns kind of about half of the parkland there, north of the new high school in the Magner subdivision. This agreement was put in place to hopefully be a more cost-effective way to maintain the property, and we believe that it has done that. I think it's also benefited the community because well, it looks more uniform and it's playable, and you don't have half a soccer field that's mowed by one person and another half of a soccer field that's mowed by someone else. And so as we go forward, it's made a lot of sense. As you may recall, this agreement has been done in year-by-year stints in the past. That was really done to help us develop some institutional processes in working with the school district to make this go. And so that's gone really very well. And so at this time, the agreement before you, the only significant modification is that this agreement allows it to continue in perpetuity with opportunity to end the agreement with notice in July of the year before work is to occur. From a service provider perspective, that gives us about 5 months to not buy fertilizer or do whatever is going to happen for the upcoming year. And from the school district, it gives them notice if they need to buy more equipment or buy supplies to maintain their portion of the Community Spirit Park area. This has been discussed by the superintendent and I, and frankly, some of you may remember that it was discussed a little bit in the last cycle, but because there was going to be a change in superintendent, it felt appropriate to allow it to be one more year on a year-by-year basis. This, again, agreement provides for it to go in perpetuity with that notice provision. Really, nothing else has changed as a part of the agreement. Every year, the numbers are updated. You budget, the school district budgets. Pete and his team work with the school district's team, Mark Bachman and the activities director, to ensure that it's maintained appropriately, fertilized right, watered right, all of those kind of things. And so that's what this agreement provides for. Mayor Pro Tem and members, the resolution's on page 57.
Does anybody have any questions? Carrie?
So we will not see this agreement come up again because it's ongoing unless we choose to terminate it. So how does the council, I guess, interact with this ongoing? I know we would see this budgeted, but we may not see or have to make a decision on this unless an agreement was terminated. Is that correct?
That is correct. I mean, it would be our goal to ensure that you know what's going on as a part of your budget process, and certainly through your Parks Board, there'll be discussion about the kind of work and the amenities that are provided for. That too would be reflected within your budget. I anticipate that as frankly, as we get out of COVID, the council and the school board had a tradition of meeting on a regular basis, once or twice a year. And so it's our goal to get back to that. And I anticipate that not necessarily this agreement, but the level of activity, the amenities, the work that goes on as a part of that park will be part of that discussion going forward as well.
Thank you.
Steve?
Todd and Pete, and I've just got a question. I know it's kind of premature, but let's say that we both go our own separate ways. How do we maintain then the quality that the city is currently providing for the community spirit park? I'm just curious, how do we maintain that quality then if you have two separate entities?
So from a practical perspective, that is driven by your Public Works Director, and he would be able to do that through the allocation of staff and the budget that you provide to make that happen on your property. But you would have no control over what would happen on the school district property. That is controlled by the school board.
So is there any, like I said, I'm putting the cart, I guess, ahead, but then I'm back, how do we maintain the quality that we've experienced up to this point? Do you have any suggestions, Pete? Or I guess we'll probably deal with that when the time comes then.
Sure. One of the things we've done, Councilmember Grams, is we have set a level of service for each of our fields, and that is on page 55. And so our level of service would stay pretty steady with what we have written right here. And those are based on the level of competition that we're playing on each of those fields. And so the school district and us got together, and that's how we developed what was going to happen on each of the playing areas. And so right now we have a good rotation and we have redundancy so that we can move games, fields, practices between football, soccer, lacrosse, baseball, softball, whatever sport we have there, we have the flexibility to do some of the movements. And it really depends on the programs that the school carries in the future and what our rec programs are carried in the future.
Okay, I just, we've heard so many positive things about Community Spirit Park and the level of commitment that the city and the school district has put into this. And we wouldn't want that to be degraded in any manner, at least I wouldn't anyway.
Right.
Well, thank you.
Any other questions? Pete, I do have one. Do they just pay us one lump sum, or is it monthly payments, or?
No, we pay as we go. Both of us pay as we go. That's a lot easier to budget our money and then to make decisions down the road when we need to. And it's worked really well in the past here.
So things can be adjusted a little bit every now and then.
Yep.
Okay.
Actually, Mayor Pro Tem and members, this number does get adjusted really on a year-by-year basis, and it's based on actuals that occur. What you see in the agreement is the estimated amounts, but it's really based on the actuals. We might put on a little bit different level of fertilizer one year or the next, as an example.
Okay, if there's no further questions, the resolution is on page 57 for approving the maintenance agreement between the city and the school district. Could I have a motion, please?
Carrie Johnson will make a motion to approve.
Is there a
Emily will second.
Okay, Barbara, call the roll.
Councilmember Ed Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos,
Aye.
Councilmember Bruflat,
Aye.
Councilmember Grams,
Aye.
Councilmember Carrie Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Noel.
Aye.
Resolution has been approved.
Thank you.
Next item on new business is the community center lease, Kids Corner, room 110. Todd, I take it's you?
Yes, sir. Mayor Pro Tem and members, the information starts on page 58 in your packet. And this is a little bit of an unusual one, but hang with me a little bit. The last time we entered into a lease with Kids Corner, it included all of their regular rooms, but they did not want room 110 past the 2020 calendar year, past December of 2020. And so that was excluded as a part of that lease. So all the rooms were leased until 2024, except the one which stopped at 2020, the one being room 110. Now they have said that they'd like to rent it for another calendar year. We've allowed them to start using it in January and February, and so far in March they've been using it. We didn't have any other renters. And what you see here is a separate lease for just room 110 that provides for their use starting in January 1st, so it will be retroactive through the end of December of this year. This lease also carries a price tag that's a 3% increase, as was the rest of their lease, so it's no different in that respect. But we should have a lease for that space, again, which was excluded after 2020 as a part of the original lease. Lease is included in your packet. They have submitted a written approval as well. It takes a little bit to process this and to have their board meetings and those kind of things. So that's why we're here at the start of March doing this. The resolution approving this is on page 65, Mayor Pro Tem and members.
Anybody have any questions? Brad?
So I have no problem approving this, but I am concerned about the amount of staff time going into these year-to-year leases. I basically having you to go through this again. If they come back again next year, which honestly I'd be surprised if they don't, because just from my own prior experience, space is space in childcare. Mm-hmm. I would like to look at doing more than another 1-year extension if they come back again next year, just because it is administrative time on our part that it takes up. So I would like to hold them to more than just a year-to-year thing, or else a higher inflationary increase, one of the two.
Sure.
Okay. Any other questions? Carrie?
I just have a comment. I just appreciate the level of, I guess, what Brad was speaking to, just the work that we do to be flexible. I think with childcare centers, childcare is so critical to our community. And we offer something really special by having 2 childcare centers in this building with all of the amenities that the community center provides. It's a great draw to St. Peter, and I appreciate anything we do to be flexible and work with childcare centers, not just in this building, but really in our community. As it is so critical and there's never enough slots. So thank you.
Thanks, Gary. Any other questions? Seeing none, the resolution is on page 65, approving the execution of the lease with Kids Corner and Child Center in room 110. I'm asking for a motion.
The boss will move.
Emily will so move. Or
Okay.
Emily will second.
Okay, we got Brad first and Emily second. Barbara, call the roll.
Councilmember DeVos,
Aye.
Councilmember Bruflat,
Aye.
Councilmember Grams,
Aye.
Councilmember Carrie Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Noel,
Aye.
Councilmember Ed Johnson.
Aye. Motion's been approved. Next on the new business is River's Edge CEO appointment.
Mayor Pro Tem and members, this item comes before you based on the city code that provides the powers and duties of the hospital commission and the powers and duties of the city council in relation to hiring a new chief executive officer for the hospital. As you are all aware, a recruitment process was held and many of you participated in interviews and selection process. The commission at its last meeting agreed to enter into a contract with Paula Meskin as the new chief executive officer. The council's role in this is to provide concurrence. The commission's role is to provide for the day in, day out operations, and we have interpreted that over the past number of years to be that they set the salary and benefits, etc., but that you have to provide concurrence with their selection of a person. What you see in your packet starting on page 66 with the resolution on page 68 provides just for that. And so it allows for the city council to concur with the hospital's commission appointment of Paula Meskin. If you approve this, her official start date as the CEO would be tomorrow. And we have a contract that has been signed by Ms. Meskin and is ready to be signed by the chair of the hospital commission, given your approval tonight. Happy to answer any questions that I can and provide any additional information, Mayor Pro Tem and members.
Does anybody have any questions? Carrie?
Sorry, just to comment again, it was a great process. The hospital staff and HR did a great job of putting that whole process together, and it was an honor to be a part of it, and I'm just really happy for Paula. Congratulations, Paula.
Stephen, I think you had your hand up.
Yes, Todd, I'd like to ask Paula a question, if she's able to join us. I have just one concern. With Paula being appointed to the CEO position, Paula was the only nurse at River's Edge that was able to put in an IV the first time into my arm when I was admitted into ER. So does that mean that in the future, when I'm admitted to ER again, that she won't be able to do that and that they have to deal with multiple injections to get someone into my veins? Because I'm very concerned that I'm losing Paula.
Mayor Pro Tem and members, well, let's not put Paula on the spot on that one. Let's wait to see what your disposition is when you are in the emergency room before an answer is provided, Steve.
Usually my disposition is not very pleasant. So maybe she would probably want to avoid me anyway.
Paula will sure provide and ensure that wonderful care is provided at River's Edge Hospital. She's had a tradition with us for now more than a dozen years. And so the commission, I know the council members that participated in that process feel very strongly that she has all the tools necessary to ensure very good service at River's Edge.
Okay. All right, well, thank you. I feel better now.
Thanks, Steve.
Okay, I do believe Shannon was next.
I just want to piggyback on Carrie's remarks about the search process and how well that went, and extend my congratulations to Paula. I've heard wonderful remarks from community members when they heard the news about Paula's appointment. So congrats, and look forward to meeting with you and working with you in the future.
Brad, I think you had your hand up.
Yeah, as I understood, I thought if I voted for Paula, that I got first dibs on actually jabbing Steve the next time he's in the emergency room. So
I think you have to have the appropriate certification. That's one of her jobs to ensure that that's in place as well.
Oh, come on.
Okay, any more questions or comments? Emily?
I just wanted to echo the thanks and the congratulations to Paula, and looking forward to your time as our CEO. And the council, I'm happy for you, and the community is happy too. So thank you.
Okay, seeing no more questions. Resolutions on page 68 with the agreement for Rivers Edge Hospital new CEO. Could I have a motion?
Carrie Johnson.
Noel will make a motion to approve.
Carrie Johnson will second.
Shannon 1, Carrie 2. Barbara, call the roll.
Councilmember Bruflat,
Aye.
Councilmember Grams,
Aye.
Councilmember Carrie Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember Noel,
Aye.
Councilmember Ed Johnson,
Aye.
Councilmember DeVos.
Aye.
Motion has been approved. Congratulations, Paula. Good luck. I do believe that's the end of new business, and now we're going to reports. And I am first on the list. Myself and the mayor were, I do believe it was last Thursday afternoon. We met on a Zoom meeting with the House Committee considering our local sales tax option. There was 6 other cities that were there that testified. We were the last one.
Ed, your mic turned off.
Oh, I might have leaned back too far. Can you hear me now? Okay. Me and the mayor were in the House Committee on a Zoom meeting about the 0.5% sales tax. There were 6 cities that were involved from all various projects. I do believe, we're the only fire department that was asked for the 0.5%. I feel it went very well, but it gets tossed in the committee or whatever until they decide to vote on it. Todd, if you got anything else on that, that's all I wanted to do.
No, Mayor Pro Tem and members, there will be additional Senate hearings coming up as well, so there'll likely be other opportunities that come forward. So we appreciate the time and the opportunity and the support from your local legislative folks, Representative Ackland and Senator Friends.
Okay, Todd, you got anything?
I do. Let me mention just a couple of different ones, if I may. First of all, just to provide clarification, because there's been some rumors on and off about this, but it's my understanding that the ambassadors are not having a St. Patrick's Day parade coming up. So if you are waiting for that, you're going to wait a long time, probably until 2022. They do have some other events that are going on, but they've decided not to do a parade this year. I think it's their full intent to go back in 2022 to having a parade. But with the distancing orders and requirements, it takes a lot of horsepower to be able to man that appropriately and in a safe fashion. So I think for this year, they decided not to do that. The next one that I have, Mayor Pro Tem and members, relates to interim building official designation. This is really a report for you and the community, but I do want to mention to you that, as you know, with the passing of your building official, Dean, we look to have a certified building official in place, which is a requirement. And so to that end, on an interim basis, Kevin Murphy will run the department. Kevin is your building inspector now, and will do just a great job doing that, but we are required to have a certified building official. And so Harry Genis Inspections, Harry's from town here, and he's going to do the certified building work that's necessary, which includes signing off on commercial permits, participating in some meetings when there are engineering and construction meetings relative to some of the commercial properties that we have in place. And he'll provide additional support on inspections during days or weeks when the inspection load is too heavy for one person to undertake. As you may know, especially this time of year, with days like today where it's 60 degrees and days a couple of weeks ago when it was seemingly 60 degrees below zero, things go and vacillate quite a little bit. So having someone that is in town that can come and do some of those inspections with not a lot of notice is very helpful. So wanted you to be aware of that. You will at your next workshop be seeing a plan for some slight modifications to the building official job descriptions and a process coming before you, which I would look to move forward after your next Monday's workshop meeting. and subsequent council meeting if you would approve building official job description modifications. So that's an update, and if you have any questions about that, happy to answer. I don't expect there to be a lot of glitches. Harry's well seasoned and knows what's going on within our community and understands contracting and the planning, and Kevin's just done a very nice job for you in the interim here. So Mayor Pro Tem and members, that's my report, unless there's other questions about it.
Steve, I see you got your hand up.
Todd, did you say Harry?
Harry.
Is he the Harry that's on the Parkview? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Would there be a formal contract written up between the city and Harry?
Yes, there is, Councilmember Grams, and so on a temporary basis like this and with the amount of money that's at stake, it is within, you provided me with authority to do these in interim, and so that's the case here. So generally, as a contract employee of this nature, Harry, using his own equipment, et cetera, is compensated at about $35 per hour.
Yeah, I'm not questioning your level of anything, Todd. I just wanted to clarify. I didn't know Harry's last name. I just call him Harry.
So the service that we've purchased has been with Harry Genis Inspection Services. And Harry is also the building official for the city of Jackson, St. James. I think he has one or two others that he does, but of course their level of construction is significantly less than yours. And so those are very part-time gigs for him. And so he's very happy to be here and work within town and not have to drive all that way and all those things. So I think this will work out, and he and Kevin have meshed very well together.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, Mayor Pro Tem, if there's no other questions, I think that's the last report that I have for you this evening.
Anybody else have anything to say, either live or on TV? Looks like we can adjourn. Anybody want to make a motion to adjourn?
Noel will make a motion to adjourn.
Emily will second.
Okay, motion passes. Everybody say aye.
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 Because I don't want to do this anymore. Thanks, everybody, for being patient.